Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Good morning, I'm Ann Schindler, and this is First Coast Connect. Today, the cost of COVID during pregnancy. We discuss what the latest research tells us about relative risk. We also dive into a rise in sleep disorders and a decline in peanut allergies. It's our monthly house call from Dr. Joe Sirven. Later in the program, a local artist documents vulnerable ecosystems using a fragile photographic process. But first, I am joined, as I am each month, by our own Dr. Joe Sirven of the Saturday WJCT program and podcast, What's Health Got to Do with It? He helps break down the latest medical headlines and takes your calls and questions. Welcome, Dr. Joe.
Hey, Ann, it's so good to be here. Happy November. I can't believe it.
Oh, I can't believe it's November already. This year is flown by. I'd like to hear the medical research on that. If you'd like to join our conversation, you can give us a call and ask Dr. Joe on any healthcare topic. You can reach us at 904-549-2937. You can email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. Of course, you can reach out on social media at FCC On Air. Dr. Joe, before we get into it, I just want to start with some big news. You and the program, What's Health Got to Do with It? You're going national.
We are excited as we, at least starting out in Florida, our home is always going to be Jacksonville, but we're excited as we move forward to several new markets in Florida. This is on the radio side, and even a new one in Texas as well. It's a way that just tells us that people want health information, and it'll all be emanating from here, our home, but going out elsewhere. On the FM, but mind you, podcasts you can get from anywhere in the world.
Sure. I mean, people do really want unfiltered medical information,
They do.
Voices that they know they can trust. And you're obviously our choice for that. But I'm glad to see that it's expanding. So we should say there's 5 new public radio stations in Florida, from Gainesville and Orlando to Fort Myers on the West Coast, Vero Beach on the East Coast, but also Texas, Arkansas, and Oklahoma. So this really is a big expansion of the footprint.
We are excited because I think that the same questions that someone in Oklahoma or Texas have is going to be very similar to someone sitting in Orlando or the Treasure Coast. It's always, who do you see and how are we going to pay for it? And then how do I handle it? And that's what we hope to do. How do we navigate this very crazy, flawed system?
Yeah. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
For those who want to listen to What's Health Got to Do with It here locally, it does air every Saturday night on WJCT at 4, every Saturday at 4, and every Sunday night at 9.
Right, yes.
So, and of course you can get the podcast. So hopefully you'll remember us when.
Never will forget. It's our home.
Right. All right. Well, let's move on to a topic that is never far from our minds here in morning radio. It has to do with sleep.
Yes.
Especially this week, even though we get an extra hour, a lot of us are moving in the opposite direction, according to research, and here in Florida, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is the daylight savings always brings us and this, I might add, the end of daylight savings, we are now in regular normal time, always brings us this conversation about sleep. The reality is most of the times, when talking about that time switch, most of our problems tend to occur in March when we make the jump forward. But this is our moment where we are a little off kilter, off sync, because that hour, although lovely, when we get that extra hour, we're still, our stomach is still on our old time. Our heads may be at another time. You may feel foggier, sleepier. I know I did on Sunday. I was looked to my wife. I'm like, does it feel like 4 o'clock to you?
Yeah. Well, it's that thing. You may get an extra hour of sleep, but then the night comes and it just starts to feel like, is it only 6:30? It feels like it's about 8 o'clock at night,
And that's what's so hard. It just tells us that we have this internal body clock. And one of the things that sleep research is telling us, especially in these time changes, is really getting yourself out into the outdoors and exposure to light. That really helps. Nothing better than having light exposure to set you up for your clock to, in essence, to be reset to whatever time it is. And so that's my little suggestion to anyone, because especially on these gorgeous days right now, go outside, get that light, because that really will help you kind of readjust.
And exercise too. I mean, in terms of resetting your clock, kind of getting into the new rhythm, that is an important way too.
Absolutely. Exercise is never a wrong answer.
Yeah.
So this is, and right now you can walk anywhere with this beautiful weather. This is a perfect time to take advantage of it.
We've got a question from Scott. He emailed, I'm over 60 years old and I wake up just about every night between 3 and 4 in the morning. Is there anything I can do to get a better night's sleep?
Yeah. So the question, Scott, what I would say is number one, we'd have to understand what's going on before you go to sleep. Is there something waking him up? Is it that he may not be breathing right? Is there some sleep apnea? Is it the food? What are his habits right before he goes to bed? Does he take long naps during the day that offset you? Do you switch shifts? There's so many possibilities there. It's that for Scott, I would tell him that may be something to do. A diary would be my best thing. Write down what you're doing, what you're eating, exercising. And then from there, use that to talk to someone in the world of sleep or primary care doctor to see if there's maybe a simple solution for him.
You know, there has been some research I've seen as well that says, you know, alcohol or caffeine within 4 hours of bedtime can be really disruptive.
I will tell you, I do not drink a cup of coffee or tea after 3 p.m. Pretty much because there are effects, lingering effects of caffeine that can really impact you. In the morning, it's okay for a little boost, but for some of us that are more sensitive, it could really make a difference in terms of getting to sleep.
So I want to ask you relative to that, because there's also been some information about melatonin and concerns about using it consistently, regularly, particularly at high doses. A lot of people use it right now routinely, and there's some issues that it could impact cognition or maybe even lead to short-term memory loss, particularly in young people.
So melatonin is one of those complicated issues. In small doses, as you need it, it is probably going to be okay. But taking it consistently or overusing it, like in any substance that you take, it's almost like if you take a tape of this next month and the month prior, it's going to be the same answer. Anything that's in excess or not, or kind of being used for a purpose that you think is helping, but it's not, it may not be the best thing for you. So my sense is if you need to take melatonin every night, maybe there's a problem that needs to get fixed and needs to get looked at in that regard. So I would not take it willy-nilly, but my only thing I would say is that it is okay to take it for the rare instances that you just feel that you need it to help sleep, or you're shifting like you're traveling to the West Coast, East Coast.
Jet lag.
That type of stuff. That it has a very unique and very helpful use in that regard.
Okay. New research, Joe, on COVID and pregnancy. You know, this is timely because we're learning more about the impacts of children in utero, unborn babies, when a mother has COVID. What is the new research showing? So
in this study, it was of women who were pregnant at the very early point of the COVID pandemic. So we are in the first type of mutation for COVID, and they were followed to see how they did with neurodevelopmental anomalies, meaning birth defects and things of that sort. And they found that women who had COVID during pregnancy in that first wave, they had a mildly increased risk of having some type of maldevelopment in the baby. What we don't know about this study, and this is what's going to be very big and important, is the vaccine had not been created. So we do not know what vaccinating would have done. We assume it should have been okay, but that was not proven here. But it did tell us that there is a real risk of pregnant women having a bad outcome with their baby if they are infected with the virus at the beginning of the pandemic. We don't know the other answers. What does it look like in terms of after the vaccines came out or other mutations of that virus came out? To me, what I took out of this is like, get vaccinated. This is one of those things that runs counter to the original recommendation this year that came out from CDC, I believe, saying, you know, pregnant women would be excluded, and then quietly it was covered. This is just a reminder you really should be covered because there is real risk of a problem from COVID should you have it during pregnancy.
And you mean covered in terms of
vaccinations.
Yeah, and that's, as you say, the Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services, RFK Jr., had basically said women should not get vaccinated during pregnancy for COVID, but then we sort of walked that back a little bit.
They walked it back. In fact, then quietly, insurance has been covering this and has not been spoken since. This is the type of study that tells us, you know what, you really should be, you should be protected. You should take advantage of the things that we have for the best outcome, because we all want the same thing. Healthy kids. That's all of us want that.
Sure. And I mean, it's so worrisome to a pregnant woman to try to make decisions that could really stick with her kid for a lifetime.
Absolutely.
But what's interesting about this is it's not necessarily, I guess, the virus that they think was infecting these fetuses,
right,
but more about perhaps inflammation. And that's interesting because it sort of ties into this other area that the president had been raising concerns about, whether Tylenol has some sort of autism link. Tell us a little bit, help us break some of that down.
So one of the things that this is telling, there's two ways that a virus can create a problem for a woman who's pregnant. One is it directly invades the baby and literally some part of it and causes a problem. The second way is that the mother's immune response, like as it gets tied up and basically all these cells, antibodies are pouring out, creates and the mother's immunity, those antibodies will cross over to the placenta and to the baby, creates hara-kiri, if you will. So one of the things that we know now in medicine in general, most types of inflammation, whether it's related to some bug or to some chronic condition, that always has a potential risk for all of us. In this particular study, it said they did not know which of these mechanisms, it didn't answer that, whether it's a direct viral link or whether it's the immune system, but one of those things is causing the problem here.
And if it is inflammation, something like Tylenol would remedy that.
That is why Tylenol is recommended as one of the few things that is that is allowed for pregnant women, particularly in those early part of their pregnancy when they have a fever.
The other thing that, in terms of when an immune system in a baby is kind of angried up like that because of the mother's response, there's also links to things like metabolic issues, obesity, hypertension, gestational diabetes. All of these things can be linked to an inflammatory response or an immune system response.
Yeah, we literally on our show, What's Health Got to Do with It, just literally did a whole segment on inflammaging, which is the concept that there is this low level of inflammation that can cause increased aging through metabolic problems like you're describing. Metabolic meaning diabetes, thyroid, hormones, and it can kind of cause problems that way. How we counter it is going to be the secret to what health looks like for the future, because we're just beginning to appreciate this.
We've got a message from Susie on Facebook. She says, congratulations on growing your audience.
Thank you, Susie.
She says, with the cancellation of Zorba Pastor, which of course is a longstanding medical program from NPR, he says, there is a need for health and medical information on public radio. It always made me sad that people would call in with questions that should have been answered by their primary care provider, but our in-person visits are often so brief that patients may be left with unanswered questions. That's one of those things that doctors wrestle with as well, Dr. Joe. And you have, I think, the privilege of working at Mayo Clinic, which has taken a very different approach to the amount of time physicians are allowed to spend with their patients, but that's not a luxury that every doctor has.
No, and it's another reminder, Ann, whether you're at Mayo or any other institution, that time is the ultimate commodity. You really want to be able to spend time to know you. You're coming to me to share a problem. That is really the way that we do good healthcare. We get AI tools and Google that helps us with the questions, but the fundamental reality is someone that knows you, that can take care of you. That's what medicine's all about.
We've got a call from Sally in Springfield. Good morning, Sally. Go ahead.
Good morning. I have a question about how often should we get the COVID shot now? I know before I think it was like every 6 months, and I'm asking specifically for seniors, but in general, how often do we do that now?
a good question.
Yeah, Sally, that's a great question. We are still at this time. It's really been at once a year when they have the new formulations. It has to be looked at to see what's circulating. It gives time for companies that make the COVID booster to kind of make sure that it's targeting whatever mutation of the virus is out there. If you are going into COVID endemic areas and you have not had it, that may be a reason to get it, but it's pretty much a yearly basis at this moment. That could change because when it comes to any discussion of COVID, I have learned to be very humble about any recommendations because they do change fairly quickly.
I should note, I'm getting a message from my producers, also your producer, Stacy, noting that Tylenol doesn't help with inflammation. And that's something I misspoke. That is true. Okay, I want to talk about gabapentin because this is sort of a strange thing that you noticed in just the report on death, basically. I think it comes from FDLE and sort of the presence of drugs in someone's system when they die.
Yeah, so this is a report that's put out by the state of Florida looking at substances that are found in people who have died from overdoses and things of that sort. The good news in this data was that they found that there was a lessening of fentanyl and opioid-based deaths. So that's great. That's wonderful. But as you look at the data when they put it all out there, you see medications that I didn't expect to be seeing in that list of drugs that were found to be associated with people who had died. And one of those was gabapentin. I think it was at about 3.3% that was listed in the statistics there. And what was fascinating is gabapentin is a non-scheduled drug. That means it does not have special DEA codes that you have to put out there. It was designed for seizures once upon a time. That's why I know it so well in the world of neurology. But it's now used for everything. And it took me a moment. I'm like, wow, how is a drug like gabapentin, what is that doing on this list? And as I spoke to others, people pointed out that when used for non-medicinal purposes, people who have opioid addictions, that gabapentin actually can magnify the high of opioid addiction, which may account for why we see that number out there. It also may just simply say that that drug is out there for so many other conditions. Everyone is using it. I know we joked about it. Even I know in our vet, my own dog is on gabapentin. I mean, this is
why
is so
it
common.
Being so widely prescribed now? I mean, as you say, it was a seizure medication, but it's being used for off-label uses, like on all kinds of things.
It is, and in fact, that has always come up as an issue. One of the reasons is that because it has almost no drug interaction, so it's so easy to give. You do not need to track it with blood tests. It is processed through the kidneys, so it's one of those drugs that you can almost give in any formulation, and it does have minimal effect. But it has had such positive benefits for people who have pain, for other type of conditions like that. And it's non-addictive to our understanding. That's why a lot of people have gravitated to using it. And now that it's generic, everyone has found an interesting new use for that medication.
Worth noting that alcohol is still the most commonly found drug in someone's system.
Correct.
So, yeah. All right. Peanut allergies.
Yes.
This is bananas. And we've been learning about it for a while, this decline, but this is really a stark reversal of what we had been seeing, a huge drop in the epidemic of food allergies, particularly with peanuts.
I love it when we can talk about a good health news story. One of the things that, as you just alluded to, people have been following is that it seemed that everyone had a peanut allergy, and it was just kind of rising. There was a study called the LEAP trial that basically looked at for certain infants that are more prone to be likely to have peanut allergies, those who have eczema or egg allergies that are identified. They were introduced with peanut-based food at very early ages in small gradated increments. So from between 4 months to 11 months of age. And in that study, they found almost an 86% relative risk reduction of developing peanut allergy. So the guidelines changed. So the most recent thing that's occurred is that there was a study looking at electronic health records, looking at what is the percentage of people that are developing peanut allergies just based on electronic health records. So there was not a direct intervention to a patient. And lo and behold, since those the new guidelines saying kind of exposure, the rate of peanut allergies has declined significantly. So that's huge, given that I remember that was a huge issue, especially if you're flying and peanut products,
which
or
they
if you're
stopped
school and things
providing
of that sort.
in most cases across the board, right? It was
Exactly. I mean, this has not been a minor issue. So to those who suffer with this, and we've done a few shows on this topic, this is a major benefit. Looking at that in terms of positives, in terms of like a simple solution, if you will, to kind of doing this.
So that's a good news story, but it kind of comes after a lot of advice that maybe fed this problem. And I want to ask you about that because a guest that you've had on your program, that we've had on this program too, Dr. Marty McCary, who is now the commissioner of the FDA, he wrote a book about doctors who get it wrong. And, that's part of the reason that he's been embraced by this administration, because he was a cynic and he wasn't necessarily beloved in the world of medicine because he was very critical of certain things. But the peanut allergy was one that he identified in his book, long ago as a problem that he thought was created by an overreaction to allergies in kids.
Yeah, what I will say is that when it comes to, and I know that book very well, many of the items that he pointed out, he's absolutely right. There are many things that medicine gets right, and when it gets it right, it really changes lives. But boy, when we get it wrong, and I'll be in that collective we there, it really has impact. The key is that we have to be a little bit more transparent, not speak so pedagogically to our patients. We have to kind of share people what the real risk is. And I think medicine is now getting the backlash of that, given all the stuff that's going on right now.
And so basically the problem there was that doctors were saying because there
avoidance.
Is this avoided. And what is the science of approaching allergies through our digestive system as opposed to through our skin system? Tell us about the emerging science around allergies.
It's telling us that at the end of the day that there are some elements of exposure that you need in order to develop a healthy type of immunity, not the type of immunity where you have an allergy, which is basically immunity that's run amok, that's basically reacting to something so feverishly that the reaction to the foreign object is worse than the actual exposure to whatever it is that's triggering it. What this is telling us that sometimes we need to have some type of exposure, if you will, and that in the early days in the GI tract, that's a perfect place because food comes from external sources, right? So our immune system has to kind of get involved in that regard. But I think this brings us up to kind of an exciting moment, if you will, in terms of just seeing, hey, there are some very simple approaches that does not involve very complicated new medications or prices. I might add, from a healthcare system standpoint, that peanut allergy solution is less than a buck or whatever the price of peanut butter is in the grocery store.
It's about $6.
Okay, thank you for the correction there. But that's the cool part of it. What a simple thing to solve something that could cost hundreds of thousands of dollars if you have to go over to treat and get managed over your lifetime.
If you're just joining us, we're talking to Dr. Joe Sirven of the podcast and WJCT show, What's Health Got to Do with It? He is here for his monthly house call, and he is available to answer your questions on any healthcare topic. You can give us a call on air at 904-549-2937. You can also email firstcoastconnect at wjct.org, or you can reach out on social media. All right. I want to ask you about heart disease and exercise when it comes to men versus women, because this study was really surprising in terms of, we're always hearing, exercise, as you say, exercise is never a bad thing. And in this case, they were looking at people who had existing heart disease and how their exercise regimen was impacting their health.
Yeah. So it was a United Kingdom study. they basically had individuals who wore an accelerometer. So, and this is basically a device that would basically kind of gauge how much physical activity they were doing. That's important because a lot of times those studies are done on survey and scouts
self-reporting.
right? And then self-reporting. Everyone thinks they do a lot more than they do, but this gave you actual data. Then they looked over a period of 8 years to kind of see what's the cardiovascular risk. I'll bring out why I brought up
or benefit.
Or benefit.
Yeah.
And this is important for the United Kingdom Health Service. They're followed by the same people from birth to death. So they don't have a fragmented system. They know those records from where you are, assuming you didn't leave the country. What they found was, I view this as a kind of what's the return on investment for your exercise. And women had a better return on investment than men did for the same level of exercise. And that is huge because it starts kind of giving us more personalized data about individuals. And number two is that there are biological differences between men and women in terms of the return on investment from exercise. Having said that, let me kind of just to make sure that guys don't give up and women, same story there. Exercise helped everybody, but the return on that, like the difference between the risk of developing cardiovascular disease was better in women than men for the same amount of exercise.
And the numbers were really crazy. So basically they were saying for your risk of heart disease to drop by 30%, which is, no small thing, but for that effect, that return on investment, women needed 250 minutes of exercise and men needed 530 to get the same benefit. Basically, men needed 9 hours a week of exercise to get that same benefit.
Yeah, and that's the part that, a part of me is I'm hearing that, I'm like, I want to go on the couch now and like I'm really
not on the Stairmaster.
But not on the Stairmaster. But it does, but again, that's why I think the way I look at it is not to take it, because it's, again, looking at it for 1 week of activity over 8 years. And so the way I view it is that it helped everybody, but yes, women did better with it. It's just a reminder that for women, keep doing what you're doing. This is, if we're all moving, it all helps. But yes,
bad news for the dudes.
Bad news for the dudes in this regard.
We've got a question from Jane on Facebook. She says, can you discuss why lactose intolerance increases as we age? And what's the best test to determine if it's a milk allergy versus lactose intolerance? I mean, I don't even know the difference, first of all.
Yeah, so what I will say about that, as you do age, sometimes it has to do with the enzyme that helps to break down one of the proteins in milk. And so your GI tract may not be producing enough of it in order to make that breakdown. Why that occurs, what happens with aging, I may not have the best answer for that, but I will just say that it has to do with the presence of that enzyme, and there are easy products to help you with it. But it is something that you do find, like, for some individuals, being able to kind of, like, the idea of a deep dish pizza loaded with cheese when you're 60 may feel quite differently than when you're 20, but it has to do with how much enzyme you have there to be able to break that down. But it's a great question.
It does seem like there's a lot of things when it comes to your immune response that as you age get less effective.
Yeah, there are something, and the question is it the aging, or is it, I'm going to go back to the topic, which is, or is it inflammation? Is there something about what's going on, how we're taking care of ourselves, the exercise, the food that we intake that's having the impact? Is that what causing the problem, that it's the immune system going slightly awry? I mean, what we keep finding is that the immune system may be the key to everything, from cancer on, from dementia and everywhere, is what I think is the real story. If you look at this from a wider lens, that we keep finding that crosses over all of this stuff.
It'll be so interesting to see, how research takes us in our understanding of that, because it does seem to impinge on so many things.
Well, that's why I find it interesting, like biologics, new immune therapies. That seems to be the hot trick, whether you're talking cancer, you're talking Parkinson's, where you're talking dementia, ALS. what do they all have in common? It's all about some type of specific harnessing your immune system to attack bad things from occurring. But a lot of those things is, how do we get into that position to begin with? That's the healthy living. That's lifestyle. That's the exercise. That's the food that we eat. That's the stuff we need to focus on.
All right. I do want to ask you about flu season a little bit.
Yeah.
Typically it kind of gets rolling in October, so maybe we're a month in. But I saw that there was some early flu season arriving in the UK, and I don't know, in like our global world, that was causing some alarm there. Recommendations for people to kind of really buckle down and get their vaccines. But does that translate to the United States? Does that matter to us?
It does to some degree, because sometimes what happens over in Europe, we're going to be they're a little kind of the early indicator versus us that may be the lagging indicator. It's something for us to watch. I think what we are hearing more about these days is the rise of RSV, respiratory syncytial virus, which is definitely up in cases in Florida and around the United States. Flu is just beginning to emerge. People are getting, I just got my flu shot. Remind everyone, get your flu shot now. But flu, this is the beginning of that season. People are now inside. The holidays are upon us, or near so, and people go inside homes, and exposure so easy. So what I would say is that I would take that as a signal that it is time for us to get serious about it, protect yourself. There's stuff that we can do. Flu vaccine is available.
What is the deal with the RSV vaccine? Is that something people should be? I mean, you say that it's surging a little bit.
It is, and for particularly older adults or very young kids, that vaccine is available. It is recommended. That is not a pleasant bug to have for those that have had it. It is increasing, and that number, we're seeing it across many states, not just Florida. So, and something just to be mindful about: hand washing, people around you, mask wearing should you desire. Those things are really helpful in helping prevent the problem.
Just finally, this is sort of a little bit of good news, I guess, as well. There's some research into the benefits of text therapy, which is kind of fun because, I mean, that's, just one more approach for people to have access to mental health resources. It didn't even exist, I think, 5-10 years ago, but now there's this option. And they were comparing it to video therapy. Yeah.
I love this. This is just another way of using technology in a good way for people who had, let's just say, a very either low level case of depression, or those that are just beginning to kind of feel that, if you will. And they found that it wasn't that it was superior, but there was an equivalence to video, that even texting a health professional over what your symptoms are can be very helpful. That's very nice, so that instead of necessarily having to talk to someone directly or spending all this time, for something as simple as a text in an early low-level case, meaning it's not severe, it may be an option out of many options, even before medications or something in that regard. And I took that as a very positive sense. Does not replace other treatment options, particularly if it's severe or very impacting you, but it is another benefit that, as simple as a text, can be useful in a whole lineup of things that we can offer people.
Well, Dr. Joe Sirven, we love talking to you. Thank you so much for coming on and giving us the monthly house call. And congrats again on your program expansion.
Thanks so much, Anne. Can't wait to talk to you in December.
All right. We'll see you then. And up next, we meet a local artist who's merging historic photographic techniques with very modern conservation pressures. Welcome back. Well, my next guest is exploring vulnerable ecosystems through an especially fragile photographic process. Here to tell us more about his latest showcase is Matt Keene. He's a journalist, adventurer, and conservation photographer. Matt, welcome back.
Thank you, Ann. Thanks for having me on the show this morning.
Of course, and congrats on your new exhibition. It's called Echoes of the Wild. It's at the Lightner Museum in St. Augustine. Tell us, first of all, a little bit about what the images are.
So this is a collection of images that I've made throughout the Southeast United States using a process called the wet plate collodion, wet plate photographic process. It's a historic photographic process that was most used between the 1850s and 1890s. And these are a collection of photos of mostly conservation areas throughout the Southeast. So landscapes and riverscapes, the St. Johns River, the Ocklawaha, the Econlocache, the Okefenokee Swamp.
Yeah. And so for people who are watching our live stream, you'll be able to see some of these images. Matt, these are, when you're up close to them and you can kind of tell looking at the images here, they're what we often describe as tintypes.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, the tintypes were the most commercially photo type of photography in the late 19th century. This was the first process that the ordinary family could go out and have their picture taken. But it was also a process that was used to make glass negatives and to make prints through that. So photographers were making glass plates of wild areas that weren't even conserved yet, and taking these glass plates to show to legislators to push for conservation of areas.
Oh, wow. So there is sort of a historical element to the conservation angle that you've taken in your photos. This is not an easy process. Describe to us a little bit, because it requires essentially like a portable darkroom, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. So anytime I go to take a photograph, I have to have my darkroom and my supplies pretty close to me. It has to be within about a 5-minute walk or so of where I'm actually taking a photograph. So I bring a portable darkroom. I bring all of my chemistry. I mix my chemistry using recipes from the 19th century. So I try to keep it pretty true to the historic process. I bring all of the supplies that are needed, trays, all of the materials. So, for instance, my aluminum or glass that I'm shooting on, and it takes a while to set that up and break it down. So, if I'm out for 3 or 4 hours, I might end up taking 2 or 3 photographs in that time.
Wow. And why is it necessary to have the darkroom handy? What is it about the process that requires this sort of immediacy?
So that's a great question. This is the basically the last photographic process where you had to have a darkroom with you. Because it's called wet plate collodion, what it means is that the plate of film that I'm using must remain wet throughout the entire process that I'm making the photograph. That includes processing it. So that's about an hour of washing after the plate's finally after the photograph's been exposed. In about the late 1890s, early 1900s, they began to come out with what were called dry plates. And those were a new type of photographic plate that allowed you to basically load the plate into a darkened plate holder and take those plates with you and make photographs without all of this additional equipment. Then you could take it. And so right about that time, basically this process just about totally died out. Because of its fidelity, it was still being used for scientific purposes up until the 1950s. But as soon as people could take a photograph and not have to have the darkroom with them, they just about totally abandoned the process.
So I guess that begs the question, why would you do this? It requires all of this extra labor. It limits the kind of the production, the amount of photos that you can take and produce in the field. Why did you want to begin using this kind of technique?
It's a great question. I think it ties back to what I mentioned earlier about the history of conservation with this process. To me, there's a legacy there that I'm able to continue, that I'm able to use the just about the exact same method that was used 150 plus years ago to promote similar concepts and to provide people with an opportunity to kind of explore uh, some of these special areas that we have down here. I love to make things. To me, I make everything that's involved with it. I cut my plates, I pour them, I do all the developing for them. I love documenting things. I love art and I love adventure. So it kind of ties all of those things together for me.
I mean, thematically, it works as well. You're talking about a process that is, by its very nature, you know, um, imperiled, sort of. I mean, the process is vulnerable to all kinds of, outside elements, to degradation. It is something that
100%.
really needs to kind of be protected and taken care of while you're processing it, and so it lends itself to the theme of conservation.
I 100% agree. I actually will even use, for instance, when I'm photographing riverscapes, I'll use the local river water to mix my chemistry with
Wow.
because I feel that it imparts something into the actual physical presence of the photograph in a way that you wouldn't have if, for instance, you were using distilled water.
It seems like that could add a whole other, unknown variable to the process.
It does.
Yeah. And so you also have a studio downtown in St. Augustine, and it is an opportunity for people who want to have their portrait taken or have some kind of photograph taken, where they can do that. But you also show them this process. It's an opportunity for people to come away with an image, but they also get to see you at work and see this wet plate in action.
Exactly. It's very dynamic. I love sharing it. I love sharing the history and how these are made. People get to see everything from me pouring the plates to the image coming out in the fixer. And for me, because this was this first commercial photographic process, it was really the first equitable photographic process. It's the first process that the ordinary family could go out and afford to have their picture taken.
Hmm.
So I love kind of being able to contribute to that as well, to keep it going and to keep this as, I'm in a college town. So I like seeing college students come in and know that they can still be able to afford to have this like timeless photograph of themselves taken.
And we should say that you're bearing a little evidence of the production, that your hands are kind of stained from it, and that's something that comes from the silver?
It is, yeah. The silver tends to stain anything organic. It lasts a few days. I try to be as cleanly as possible, but when I work a lot in the process, it
Shows
does.
that you're in the lab, that's right. It just shows that you're at work. Well, the exhibit is called Echoes of the Wild. It's at the Lightner Museum. It runs through January 18th. And we've got info about that on our website. But Matt Keene, it's great to see you again. Thanks. Congrats on the show.
Thank you so much.
All right. Up next, a story of loss and longing in a conservative small Florida town. We talk to a local filmmaker about his film, Baby Tooth.
The Florida Theater presents Pat Metheny. The jazz guitarist, composer, and bandleader brings his Side Eye 3 Plus tour to Jacksonville on Tuesday, March 17th at 8 p.m. Tickets and information available at floridatheater.com.
ServPro, independently owned and operated. Whether it's water, mold, or fire damage, they'll help you restore your home or business. ServPro is available 24/7. ServPro, helping to make it like it never even happened.
WJCT Public Media, ViStar Credit Union, Sudeth Moving and Logistics, and the Tom Bush family of dealerships are honoring the memory of Fred Rogers with the annual Mr. Rogers Neighborhood Sweater Drive. The drive runs through November 30th and accepts gently used sweaters, jackets, blankets, and new socks and underwear. Contributions will be donated to nonprofit facilities within the First Coast area. Items may be dropped off at WJCT Studios as well as ViStar Credit Union branches, Sudeth Moving and Logistics, and the Tom Bush family of dealerships. For more info, log on to WJCT.org/events.
The Supreme Court weighs in on whether President Trump's tariffs can stay. Their decision could transform much more than just trade policy.
Enormously dramatic shift in executive power, and would be alike to having a president officially armed with lightning bolts to hurl without any oversight.
That's on the next On Point.
Today at 11 on WJCT News 89.9.
Farmers have been hit hard by President Trump's tariffs. The cost of fertilizer and machinery went up, while the market for certain crops nearly disappeared. But last week's trade deal with China could provide relief, and the administration says it's readying a $12 billion farm aid package to pay out post-shutdown. The impact of Trump's economic policies on the American farmer, next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. A local filmmaker is launching an ambitious project with plans to shoot and film and cast the film here in Jacksonville. He kicks off a fundraising effort here at WJCT Studios on this Thursday, November 6th. Here to tell us about it is filmmaker Drew Lewis Brown. Drew, welcome.
Hi, Ann. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here. So, Baby Tooth, gonna have you scooching a little bit there. Baby Tooth is the name of the project. What is the inspiration for the name?
Well, Baby Tooth essentially is a fictionalized retelling of the last few days that my grandmother was alive. It's essentially a 70% autobiographical. It happened at a time in my life where, growing up as a queer closeted kid in rural towns across Alabama and Florida, I grew up into someone who was rather insecure when it came to masculinity and my definition of what it meant to be an adult and to be a man. And I have a baby tooth that never fell out because I was born without the adult tooth that was supposed to disintegrate the roots to push the baby tooth out. And so because I didn't have that happen, the roots of my baby tooth actually remain super intact and very strong. And so this relic of a childhood that I was hoping I could get rid of actually turned out to be a really strong part of my foundation as a person. And so while all this was happening, my grandmother fell and she broke both of her legs. And at 95, she was not going to walk again. So she then lived in a medical bed in the middle of my mom's home. And my sister and mother were her main caregivers. And I would come and visit and see the sacrifices that they would make in their own lives to provide for this woman who we had known our entire lives. And it was just sort of seeing these themes of safety and acceptance that I was battling and, grappling with within myself, trying to keep myself safe and accepting my own journey, was also mirrored in the role of being a family caregiver, trying to keep someone safe and alive while having to accept their inevitable death. And so when I experienced this with my family, I recognized this really had the power to be an important story to be put on paper and eventually on the screen.
And so it is powerful, but also exposing. How do you deal with that as a filmmaker, something that is so close to your own story and rooted in your own experience?
Yeah, I mean, people say that you should write what you know, and I didn't really consider myself much of a writer until I experienced these life-changing things with my family that really motivated me to put it on paper. I mean, with Baby Tooth in particular, a lot of millennials don't really think about caregiving. We don't really, we're not really put in positions where we have to think about caring for our aging loved ones. It's usually, the generation before us or our aunts and uncles or our parents, but I think it's a conversation that we are all going to have at some point in our lives. And along with that conversation, it's a matter of understanding how are we going to balance the other demons that we're battling with ourselves while also, trying to provide for the people who we love.
And so that is the theme. And for folks who are watching our live stream, there's sort of a proof of concept video that you've put together for this film. So this is kind of at the nascent stages. You will be fundraising for this project. You're planning on shooting it here. You're planning on casting a lot of it here. Tell us a little bit about the scope of the project.
Sure. So, making an independent feature film is so challenging to do. I mean, I think it's nearly impossible without honestly having support from a community behind you. So the budget for the film this film in particular is $1 million, which is really small when it comes to the industry standards of how much a movie actually costs. And fortunately, the production segment of the budget is about $700,000. And so with the goal of filming this here in Jacksonville, that means there's going to be $700,000 worth of goods and services that are going to be going directly into, the local community. And so that's why, it was really important for me to create this fundraising effort to help, secure some seed money to really get the project going.
And so you're looking for community support for this. You've also been a big supporter of the local film scene. You've won Best Film at the LOL Film Festival in the past. You've won awards for your other work, including Gray.
The Gray Area.
The Gray Area,
Yes,
which is a very popular film and has been viewed a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So this is not your first endeavor, but it is a challenge. So at this fundraiser that you're hosting Thursday, what is it that people will see in terms of this project?
Sure. So at the fundraiser, essentially, it's a kickoff to an end of year giving campaign. And the fundraiser will be hosted by me. I'll be essentially giving a presentation about my own personal journey growing up in Northeast Florida and how that really set the foundation for Baby Tooth. We'll also be screening 2 short films, a documentary about family caregiving that I recently made with my family about their own experience, as well as the cinematic proof of concept that some of your viewers are watching on the live stream. Our audience will also hear from a representative from the Jacksonville Film and TV office, specifically about how productions like Baby Tooth can bring real economic impact to Northeast Florida, specifically the fact that Baby Tooth plans to create over 150 local jobs for people working in independent film here. And additionally, they'll also hear from 2 of our principal cast members, one being Tony Award winner Judith Ivey, who was actually here in Northeast Florida in the 90s filming The Devil's Advocate with Keanu Reeves and Al Pacino. So she's really excited to be back here.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, we'll look forward to tracking it as it moves along and gets into the production phase.
Mm-hmm.
We've got more information about it on our website, but that is Thursday here at WJCT Studios. Starts at 6.
Starts at 7.
Starts at 7. I'm sorry, doors at 6. Looks
It'll
like
be doors at 7 and the event begins at 7:30.
All right, I've got completely wrong information here.
That's okay.
All right, Drew Brown, thank you for coming on. Nice to see you.
Thanks a lot. Nice to see you too.
And thank you for listening. That's our program. If you have comments or suggestions, you can send either to firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. And if you missed anything, you can catch our rebroadcast tonight at 8 o'clock or find us on your favorite podcast platform. First Coast Connect is produced by Stacey Bennett. Our associate producer is Isabella Casapow. Our show is directed by Brady Coram. And our theme music is performed by Club de Belugas. Join us tomorrow when we discuss what a Michelin star could mean for the First Coast restaurant scene. Thanks for listening.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com. The North Florida TPO is committed to shaping our transportation future. We're focused on planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, connected community. Learn more at northfloridatpo.com. Jacksonville Business Journal's Morning Edition, delivering business news daily straight to the inboxes of the city's decision makers, executives, entrepreneurs, investors, and industry leaders. Information and subscriptions available at bizjournals.com/Jacksonville.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Up next, national and local news from NPR and the WJCT News team.